Penultimately then, we can also talk, and I mentioned this at the beginning, about the notion of strategic or creative accounting for strategic creativity. We can ask for the participants' perspectives. And in a very important article by Sarah Collins in the journal Communication and Medicine in 2005, she reports how professionals describe a host of ways in which they use language consciously and manipulatively to create particular effects. Now, this is not the same thing as what I'm saying about oncology. And in a way, I'm saying this because I think this is only part of the story. Doctors say things, well, I pepper language and concepts throughout the encounter which are a little like wake-up calls. Or I throw a Z-bend into the situation. Or I deliberately confound the conscious mind to invoke a more creative opening. I try not to run through lists of things, swallowing problems, voice problems, earache. But if you say no pain or anything like that, that opens up the option for the patient to say, no, I haven't got any pain, but my ear's fallen off. Now, I think that that kind of statement, or that kind of series of statement, has some value. But what I would prefer, on the whole, is to look at the way in which doctors, in these interactions, strategically envisage the interaction as a whole. So that they have what some psychotherapists talk to, or psychiatrists talk to us, and they said, I have two trajectories. I have a strategic trajectory in which I cite this interaction over the 45 minutes within a series of interactions. But I also have a tactical and strategic moments within that trajectory in which I use my communicative and discursive resources in order to achieve particular purposive effects. And it's that, I think, which is at the heart of this understanding of discourse as, if you like, strategic interdiscursivity. So what are the challenges to researching strategic creativity as interdiscourse? Well, I think we need to explore entanglements, working for joint problematization in interprofessional practice, new structures of attention. I think we need to look at modes of modeling and mapping behavior. We need to explore the contested boundaries that I've been partly talking about, linking to what is said to what is actually done in the interaction, focusing on the creative use of strategy, and understanding challenges to strategic communicative expertise in action, exploring the conditions of production and the reception of messages. There are three recurrent themes then that go through all of our work, and I think the work of many others involved in professional communication. The notion of joint problematization involving the researcher and the participants in the research as a collective action, rather than something which takes the data, takes it away, analyzes it, and then probably doesn't even return it. So joint problematization over a period seems to me absolutely essential. The notion of recontextualization, that is to say, of looking at the ways in which particular kinds of interactions and particular discourses can be recontextualized from different perspectives, from the doctor's perspective, or from the participant's perspective, or indeed, if there are more than one participant, several participants' perspective. And this notion of reflexivity as a kind of practice, whereby people become accustomed to a kind of commentary on their own particular interactions. And this we're doing with this group of general practitioner trainers at the moment in Parramatta, where we meet them monthly and they bring videos of their own practice of working with general practitioners, and we sit around in a kind of round table looking at the ways in which this kind of interaction and the videos of it can be initiated. So what are the concluding creative questions? How to align participants and analysts' perspectives in professional discourse studies? I don't know whether the rest of this is gone. Perhaps it's just disappeared. Do you know? Oh yeah. What constitutes a point of entry into discourse data? How much context is recoverable from the data under analysis? How to balance what Gates calls thick description, and my colleague Srikanth Sarangi talks about thick participation, including appeals to ecological validity, and how to map and contrast entire cases versus the mapping and contrasting of episodes. So finally then, what I'm saying is that, from my perspective, the notion of creativity in discourse is quite closely and keenly related to notions of purposiveness. The notions of purposiveness involves us making a connection between personal choices in discourse with professional choices constrained by the institutional conventions within which that particular interaction occurs. Now actually, if I look around my house, and we have about 20 paintings by the Australian abstract artist John Coburn, and if you look at those paintings, it seems to me that exactly those kinds of principles are the ones which I'm employing in order to understand the relationship between the abstract objects redolent in some sense of Matisse, redolent in some sense of Rothko, and the Australian territory, for example, in terms of the way in which the desert is reproduced and so on. When I look at that, I see that it's possible to imagine the interaction between the components and they with me in much the same way as one sees the relationship between personal choices in discourse, my professional adherence, and the institutional constraints in which we all work. Thanks very much.